Alabama's win total for this season is set at 11.5, and for those who don't know, the postseason does not count towards these type of wagers. So essentially, an overbet means you think Alabama is going undefeated at 12-0. The Tide are returning just 33% of their offensive production from last year's title team. Do you like Alabama to run the table?
I personally think, guys, that it's just entirely too big of an ask. When you look at the SEC and the SEC West more specifically, that league really has improved at almost every single spot, especially the division, man. A&M, even though they have a lot of departures, they should be better. Bama goes to College Station and plays at Texas A&M. A lot of people think Bama's looking at about a 2-touchdown favorite there. It's pretty remarkable, but when you really dive into it, I take the over. Nick Saban has gotten to a point now with his roster where they are so deep, so versatile, so good on the offensive side as far as the skill positions are concerned, and then couple that with the fact that the defense returns almost entirely intact from a year ago, in which, yes, it wasn't the best Alabama defense we've ever seen, but it's an Alabama defense that played poorly in only 2 games. So I actually would shockingly take the over at 12-0. I really think they're going to get there because the gap between them and everybody else still is about as wide as the Grand Canyon.
All right, Greg, as you well know, this era of college football has been dominated by your alma mater, Alabama, and, of course, Clemson and Dabo Swinney in the ACC. Bama, the shortest odds to win a national title, Clemson right behind them. Clemson opens up with a barn burner in Charlotte against the Georgia Bulldogs. The Tigers are 4-point favorites. How are you approaching maybe wagering on that game?
I take the points, and I love Clemson this year, and I love DJ Uiagalelei, who's stepping into what were the enormous shoes of Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. But DJ, we were there actually, saw his first start in the face of adversity against Boston College. Clemson was about a 21-point favorite after Trevor Lawrence tested positive. I think everybody and their brother thought Boston College might have been the play with the points that day, not knowing what to expect from DJ Uiagalelei, but he responded in what was pretty remarkable fashion, ended up getting the win. It wasn't pretty, but he found a way. And then the following week, he goes to South Bend, starts in a very difficult environment against what was a playoff team in Notre Dame, and he gave them a chance. They ended up losing that game, but they didn't lose it because of his performance. So I love Clemson this year. I think they're probably going to be a team that's at worst 11-1, but I actually think they would lose that first game. I'd take Georgia. I'd actually go money line, but if you're going to give me 4, I'll take the 4.
All right, another big Week 1 matchup takes us to the Big Ten, where Wisconsin is going to be laying 4.5 against Penn State. What are the chances the Nittany Lions can spring the upset at Camp Randall in the opening week?
Highly probable. I actually really like Penn State this year, and a lot of people say, well, they started 0-5 last year. You know how difficult it is to get a team that has to test every single day, that starts the season 0-5 to buy in the second half of the season? Well, that's exactly what James Franklin was able to do. They actually come into this season with a 4-game winning streak. 4-5 last year, and granted, yes, no one's going to sit there and hang a banner in Happy Valley, but I think it showed the commitment level of the players on the roster. You also look, too, at the performance of Wisconsin in 2020. There's a lot of buildup. There's a lot of hype surrounding the Badgers. I don't see it. At this point, I think Wisconsin is still one of those teams that, yes, they've advanced to a certain extent in trying to open their offense just a little bit behind new quarterback Graham Mertz, who's athletic and capable at the position. But I don't think they have a lot of explosive playmakers, whereas Penn State, a lot of explosiveness on that offensive side of the football. So I like Penn State to win this game outright, especially, and we don't know yet, we think it will be full capacity in Camp Randall in Madison, Wisconsin, but if it's not, then that home field becomes essentially a wash. It might actually favor the road team if there's crickets there in Camp Randall. So I like Penn State in this matchup. I take the points. I actually feel decent about them pulling the win off outright.
All right, Greg, let's move finally out to the West Coast Pac-12 Conference. Oregon, the favorites to win that conference, plus 250. They have a guy in Kayvon Thibodeau who very well could be the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. But the conference specifically has not had a lot of success in this college football playoff era. Only 2 teams from the Pac-12 have gone to the college football playoff. Washington, the most recent, 4 or 5 years ago. Do you think this year a Pac-12 team is able to get in?
I think there's a really good chance, but it's going to require there being a misstep early in the season by the Ohio State Buckeyes. Oregon, as you referenced, they actually go to Columbus in week 2 and have a chance now with Oregon they actually have a lot of pieces back off their roster last year. And yes, it was not a good year for the Pac-12 in general. Anyone that's using the 2020 season as a barometer of where the Pac-12 is, don't. You're wasting your time. There was not a single meaningful game played in the Pac-12 last year because of their start date. And as far as the playoffs are concerned, you really can't use any game that last year as a barometer for potential success. But if you look at what Oregon did 2 years ago, they're a physical football team. They are a team that actually now has a good identity offensively. Joe Moorhead, their offensive coordinator, formerly of Penn State, and then was at one point the head coach at Mississippi State. He's got a good quarterback-friendly scheme that should take some of the pressure off of the quarterback position. So I actually really like Oregon this year. I think the Pac-12 North is very gettable. Washington also has a good test early on against Michigan. I think Washington has a real chance to win that game. And I think Oregon, even if they lost to Ohio State, they would still have the meat on the bone in the schedule to be able to get back up into striking distance if they win the Pac-12 crown. So I actually like Oregon to be in the mix, but it's going to require a misstep by Ohio State or somebody in the Big Ten.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.